everyone. Welcome. This is Take the Lead, Change the Game, a podcast for women leaders looking to deepen their knowledge and skills and find enjoyment in the process. We are powered by Safra Leadership. Safra is a cohort-based coaching experience designed to fuel courage and ignite impact among women professionals. I'm Lindsay Goldford Gray, and I'm here with my co-host, Mindy Gulati, and our special guest. Mindy and I are the co-founders of Safra. Together, we bring a blend of leadership, coaching, strategy, and lived experience to help women navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and lead with confidence. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today, Jeana Patel, who is a dear friend and colleague. Jeana is a former litigator turned legal recruiter working primarily in Texas. She uses her boots on the ground knowledge of the hiring market to help law firms and corporate legal departments hire and grow strategically. She also provides candidates a consultative approach to their job search while allowing them to tap into her network of opportunities. So, welcome, Jeana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. So, first off, can you tell us a little bit about your career journey? So, where have your post-law school adventures taken you?
Yeah, sure. So I went to law school like kind of straight from undergrad. And I kind of went with the intention of helping people. That was kind of my purpose. I graduated, I took a couple bars, I have a couple licenses in a couple states, and I was a litigator, and I was in the weeds doing the things that litigators do, and just kind of had this realization that I wasn't loving it. I think maybe I was like 3, maybe 4 years into practicing and was thinking about starting to have a family and couldn't really conceptualize doing both. Um, and so, and also at the same time, kind of felt unfulfilled in I'm not really helping anyone in this litigation career track. And so I did a lot of inner work, as well as like outer work, like networking, talking to a bunch of people, trying to figure out what else I could do. And through my networking, I met my current colleague work bestie, and she was like, this is what I do. I went to law school. She was like, I think you would be really good at it, so why don't you give it a try? So that's kind of how I winded my way into this legal recruiter career. At the time, the company I joined, they placed an emphasis on hiring people that had JDs, that had worked in a law firm. And so that was kind of my in, even though I had no experience doing it. But it ended up being kind of like a great match for my skills. And also, I am helping people, in their job search, that sort of thing. And I'm pretty outgoing. And that was kind of one of the other things about litigating. You have this idea that you're going to be in a courtroom and talking to people and all this stuff, and you're really just drafting motions in a computer. So it's been a really great match for my skill set and personality.
Awesome. How long ago did you make that shift? You said 3 to 4 years into practice, you sort of started being like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so I made the shift almost 9 years ago. So I have been recruiting for like almost twice as long as I practiced. And it was, when I did it, I, went through a lot of ups and downs, and my parents, who I'm very fortunate, they like footed the bill for all of my education. So I felt really guilty not practicing after they paid all this money for my law degree. And they weren't thrilled with me, to be honest, but my husband was super supportive, and he was like, look, you have to live with these decisions, so you do what's best for you. And I also, in the back of my mind, was like, if this doesn't work out, I can go back to litigating. And I was so early on in my career that I knew that wouldn't be super difficult. And I also think the timing was really great because it was before I had a family. I mean, I was married, but I didn't have kids, and so I feel like it's easier to do it at that point versus when you're like already in the weeds, have all these people depending on you. I was able to make more of a selfish decision at that point in my life.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds like, you really value your family time. And I'd love to know a little bit about your family, what you do outside of work.
Yeah, so I have two young kids, 5 and 7-year-old boys. They are rambunctious and time consuming, but they're wonderful. And my husband, so for the last 7 or 8 years, I was on the Travis County Women Lawyers Association board. I held a couple different roles. I just rolled off in September, so I have a little bit more free time than I used to. I was also on the South Asian Bar Board for a few years. Um, so a lot of, involvement in the legal field outside of the work that I'm doing. My husband and I both have really big families that come with a lot of mandatory social events, uh, oftentimes out of the country, to be honest. In the last 5 years, both of our brothers have gotten married in Mexico, which, if you can imagine, is a heavy lift with two young kids. And everything is especially if it's your immediate family, like our siblings, like this is a family thing. Like when my brother-in-law got married, my husband and I were on the stage during his wedding the whole time. So they're heavy lifts, all of it, but it's great. It's wonderful. But I knew I had to, like I said, it's none of it's optional. So I had to build a career that could support that.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that sort of the transition into legal recruiting was somewhat seamless because at the time you didn't have kids or didn't have sort of your own nuclear family outside of just your partner. Has there been a time since then where you were faced with a choice and it was hard?
Yeah, yes. I feel like that comes up so often when you're a mom with young kids, especially in this like post-COVID world where it was like, do I send them to daycare? Do I not send them to daycare? Like what am I investing in all these different places? But I actually turned down a promotion a few years ago at my prior company. It was just the timing of it was just not something that worked for me. Like it was 2022. We were just coming out of COVID. I had like a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old or 1-year-old and a 3-year-old, something like that. And I was finally feeling like I had reliable childcare and daycare wasn't closing because there was a case of COVID for a week. And, my supervisors at the time approached me with this like opportunity to grow within my company. And it was a lot more responsibility, obviously, and more of a leadership role. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I felt like I had gone through a lot in the 3 or 4 years prior, and I just was like, I need some stability. Like I need to be 100% all in what I'm doing, and I don't think that I would be in this role. Like I don't think that it would serve anyone, let alone myself. And so I turned it down.
Yeah, that's so honestly like brave, courageous, and really true to who you are. Did you hear the voices in your head that were like, you should do this, right? This is what
Yeah.
success looks like.
Yeah. Yes, I did. And I feel fortunate that the company that I was with, they were so great. They're still so great. They were very transparent with like, this will be available to you in the future if you choose to turn it down now. So that made me feel a lot better.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it was also one of the nice things about the role I'm in right now is I work commission based, right? So it was a step up in title. I would have more responsibilities. It would look great on my resume. But the compensation wasn't something that I really had to consider because I could always make more money recruiting, right? Filling jobs.
Right.
So I think that was a piece of it too, that like if we were just looking from a compensation perspective, I think that would have made it harder too, because for me to like turn down financial moves. But since it was like a little bit of everything, and because everyone was so supportive in this like, this is the reality, make the right decision for you.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm excited to hear a little bit about recruiting from you and kind of that world. I know a lot of people who listen to our podcast are interested in recruiting and kind of what goes on. But I want to sort of start with focused on you as a recruiter. Is it ever challenging to find yourself trying to have influence in situations where you don't have the decision-making power? What is that like?
Yes, it happens all the time. From a lot of different perspectives, but I feel like, I've been doing this for 9 years. So one of the things that I feel like I bring to the table, especially for my clients who are not hiring all the time, is I have this institutional knowledge of just what the market looks like at any given moment in time, what the candidate pool is like, what people are wanting, what they're not looking for, all of that sort of stuff. And so my goal is to convey all that to my clients so they know what they're getting into when they're hiring. But it's not, it's not always, I'm not always successful at it. And I get it from my client's perspective, right? Especially some of my smaller clients, it's like, well, this is our budget. We can't come up with more money. Or like, we can't change the schedule to hybrid for one hire. Everyone else that we already have is here coming in 5 days a week. So let's find someone else like that. But I want everyone to be realistic, right? And so that's where that's the perspective that I'm trying to bring. But it's hard. People are not always receptive to me. And I get it. At the end of the day, I'm like someone they've hired to help them fill these jobs that are hard to fill. And so I also get where they're coming from in terms of like, well, we're paying you money to find this person. So we're not going to make it easier for you. Like, just find the person. And then on the candidate side too, I do a lot of associate search. So I'm working with, people that are making maybe their first professional move of their career. And so I do think, with my experience, I have a lot more, I don't want to say the word authority, but I'm able to persuade candidates a little bit more than clients, especially the type of candidates that I'm working with. But it can be hard. I've had candidates sometimes will turn down jobs for reasons that they can't really articulate well, like vibes, gut feelings, which stay true to your gut, but also like a $20,000 raise is a $20,000 raise, which is why you're hiring in the first place. So let's back up on the gut. So yes, it happens day in and day out. It's great practice for me to try to be more persuasive and authoritative in my meetings, but it can be hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. And everybody sort of wants what they want, and they're like, well, I'm going to bring the magician in.
Yeah.
Give me all the things, and you're like, I don't have a rabbit.
There's a term, maybe you've heard it in hiring, a purple squirrel or a purple unicorn. Those are like very hard to find candidates. And so when I talk with my colleagues, I'll be like, this is a purple unicorn candidate.
Yeah.
What's funny is just yesterday I was actually teaching a class on hiring at an engineering firm because they need to hire a lot of engineers very quickly. And they're always looking for the unicorn. And I said, sometimes you're not going to get the unicorn, but can you build that person into the unicorn? Like, can you help them get their horn and their wings and like think about that? Because you all have to hire a lot. There's not that many unicorns out there. So it was so sort of funny you brought this up.
No, yeah. I've been on several hiring committees, including trying to replace myself, who founded the organization. So like I already had all the skills because that's why I did it. Right. Yeah. And so I always think of the gif of like the unicorn pole dancing where it's like,
yes,
fabulous. And it's like, that's what I always think about is like, you are looking for this unicorn and like, maybe you'll get most of it, but like probably not everything.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases.
And I feel like that's sometimes where my frustration comes in because my clients will get there eventually, right? But it's like when we're 4 weeks into the search and I've presented you with candidates that aren't perfect, but I think, could fit the bill. We can groom a little. And then they'll kind of face reality. But it's like, my purpose here is to help you fill this seat. And we could have filled it a month ago
Yeah.
if we had listened to my perspective.
Right. But
Um,
sometimes we gotta
yeah.
figure it out ourselves. We gotta
Mhm.
come to the realization, even though you've said it 18 times.
Yeah.
For sure. So I want to talk now about, you had just talked about some of the challenges, but I'm really curious about blunders. So on both the employee and employer side, what are the biggest blunders that you've seen in hiring?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think
Do you need like an extra hour to answer?
Yeah, you're like, oh, let me
Probably your
tell
whole
you
life.
guys.
yes, I know. I want to focus on a couple big ones
Yeah.
because the goal, right, at the end of the hiring process is for you to hire someone and someone to accept your job.
Yeah.
And so I think two of the biggest things that I see, and I'll one from each perspective, from the employer side is like you don't have a tight hiring process. You know, one of the most frustrating things for me as a recruiter is if you engage with candidates before you know what your interview process looks like, or if you even engage with a recruitment company before you're ready to interview, we're spinning our wheels to get you candidates and then you just sit on them. That kills all the momentum for these candidates.
Yeah.
And for us, then we're like, okay, this is not a priority for you. We're not going to work on it. And so I guess this is kind of nuance to the way that I work. But even if you're working without a recruiter, like you need to have your interview process tight. You need to know who they're going to meet with, how many interviews they're doing, at what point do you want a reference check point? At what point do you want, if you have some sort of quiz or personality test or anything that needs to be done, like all of this, you need to know all of this because as an employer, if you come across as disorganized, like that's a huge turnoff for the candidate. But you'd be surprised at how many people come to the table thinking they're ready to hire when they're not ready to hire. Like in their mind, they're like, we're ready to hire because we have the work. But it's like, you have to realize what hiring entails. There's like the whole process before they get to work. And so I think that's what I see from an employer side is like one of the biggest things that can keep you from making the hire is not having that process tight. Assuming everything else lines up, you can pay well, there are candidates available, all of that stuff. And then on the employee side, and if you spend any time on LinkedIn, I feel like you see it, like, I've been ghosted by this candidate, blah, blah, blah. But it's really lack of transparency that I think is a really big blunder. And there's a couple of different ways that I've seen this play out. One is like life happens, okay? Maybe you got let go from a job or people get fired, like it happens. And I think it's gonna come out. So you have to be honest and upfront about it so we can like tackle it at the beginning.
Yeah.
But the other way that I see it is when you're not really honest and transparent about your job search with your prospective employers. And I'm not saying you have to be like, I'm interviewing at Apple and IBM tomorrow at 2 o'clock. But like, let them know that you have other things in play because one, it works to your advantage because then you're like this hot commodity, right? Like other people are interested in you. And they will potentially move faster to make things happen. But two, like it's a small world. You don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now. So if you don't tell an employer, like, hey, I'm interviewing somewhere else, like I might get an offer next week. If they're in the dark about that, they offer you a job and you come back and you're like, turned it down, taking something somewhere else. What naturally happens is that they think, oh, they used my offer to go leverage it and get more money somewhere else. They don't think that you were actually in it and interested in them. And so that's why I think the transparency is so important because when you're transparent, you can also be like, I'm really interested in this opportunity with you, but other people are interested in me. So let's play ball. Like, what's going on
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
There's a lot of nuance, but at the end of the day, it's like just a whole big negotiation, and you have to be willing to be upfront with what's going on so you can get the best kind of prize, but also not burn bridges in the process.
Why do you think people are hesitant to share that information? And I'm curious also if you find that it varies by gender.
I honestly haven't paid attention enough to know whether or not it varies by gender. I think that people are hesitant to share because that's just kind of the way they've been taught, or like there's a lot of mystery behind hiring, right? It's like people are not looking for jobs all the time. It's not something that you do a lot, right? And so when it's this like once or twice or 3 or 4 times in a lifetime thing, like there's not all this institutional knowledge that you have on how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think people are trying to not pigeonhole themselves, like they want to get the best offer that they can. So instead of giving a salary range or, like offering up information, they play everything close to the chest and they're like, well, let's see what they have to bring to the table type thing. It's I feel like very similar to a real estate negotiation.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think the research says that in negotiation, if you make the first offer, you put yourself in a better position in a number of ways.
Mm-hmm.
You set the bar, right?
Yeah.
So like if they're thinking, I mean, in a realist, or for salary, if they're thinking 200,000 and you're thinking 250, like if you go in at 250, they have to go up, not down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you sort of set the tone for that discussion.
Yeah, but I think people are afraid of limiting themselves. I think that's why people are not offering up a lot of information.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so interesting because like in a situation where someone has you, like I think a lot of times what happens in hiring is folks, especially with salary, it's like they don't want to go too high,
Yeah.
but then they don't want to sell themselves short.
Yeah.
And so they don't know, but it's like if you have a recruiter.
Yeah. And salary is not something that I really struggle with my candidates. Like candidates will usually tell me what what their goal is, what they're willing to accept, there's a lot of variables, but it's more so with the other aspects of their search. Like where else are you interviewing? How many interviews have you had? Like, do you think you'll get an offer this week, next week, whatever, so that I can take that back to my clients and be like, if you really want this candidate,
right, you got to move. Yeah.
You got to move. They're expecting an offer at this amount of money. Like, can you match it? Should we move on and find someone else?
Yeah.
That's where I feel like I provide the most value, because those are awkward conversations to have if you're not working with a recruiter, right?
Yeah.
But so I feel like if you're transparent with me, then that's great. I can use that information to help you or save you time and energy.
Right. No, for sure.
This is so helpful. And it's something, where I work with lots of companies that are hiring, and man, like people have a very hard time hiring because on the employer side, if it's like a hiring manager, not somebody in HR, but like the actual, say, engineer or partner, they get nervous about the transparency too. Like they get scared. And so it's like both parties are sort of like, how honest am I? And I think it's really weird because you're about to go work for this company for a very long time, hopefully. So you want to start off honest, but there's so many barriers. So I think this is so interesting. I know we're about out of time, so we always like to ask sort of what piece of advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know and kind of all the things you've been to?
Yeah, another great question, guys. I would say to really stay true to yourself and your strengths and play to those. And one, that requires like knowing who you are truly, right? Like not who you should be in society. I'm the eldest daughter of immigrants. So if that tells you anything about how I grew up in terms of doing the right thing versus doing the right thing for me. But yeah, I think staying true to yourself is like one of the most important things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you've done that, and that's why
Yeah.
you're successful.
Yeah.
Love that.
It's so fun to be a small part of your
And
journey.
everyone has been very supportive at the end of the day, my immigrant parents included.
Good. That's amazing. Well, it's been really fun to be a small part of your journey and appreciate so
Thank
much your
you.
insight.
Thanks for
today.
having me again.
And if anyone watching needs a legal recruiter, got your girl.
Yes.
Let's
me
hear it.
Tell me everything. Be transparent.
Yes, be transparent and stay true to yourself. Awesome. We love that. All right. Well, we'll see everyone next time.
Bye.
Bye.